If you've ever wondered which class in Baldur's Gate 3 is actually worth your time and which ones are better left alone, then you are in the right place. And believe it or not, with the game's latest patch, the meta has shifted again and the rankings this time around might actually surprise you. So today we're diving into our ultimate class tier list for Baldur's Gate 3. I'll be breaking down the absolute best classes in the game right now, including why the Sorcerer and Paladin are great options, why the Ranger might secretly be broken for solo honor mode, and why the Rogue is, well, we'll talk about Rogue. In this video, we'll also talk about the best ways to play each class, including some of the best multi-class options. So whether you're a brand new player to the game or a veteran looking to crush honor mode with the best build possible, stick around and let's jump right into it. Kicking things off from worst to best, let's start with the D tier, number 12 on our list, the Rogue class. Nothing unique or special in comparison to other classes in the game right now, unfortunately, thus ranking it D tier for us. Now this may seem odd, considering Asterion starts as a rogue and he's immediately helpful picking locks and identifying traps. While that is true, the Ranger can do almost the same thing immediately, but also gain weapon and armor proficiencies and have an extra attack. So the lack of equipment choices early on and those extra attacks gives this a pretty meh class feeling overall, but with decent subclass options. I mean, the Thief is very powerful because of the extra bonus per turn, but beyond level 4, the Rogue class has really nothing much to offer, and it's going to be, unfortunately, a weak main class that should be avoided if you want the most power possible for your group. Next up in the C tier, we have the Druid. So having a unique wild shape form with abilities and HP makes the Druid rank C tier on our list for this video. The major upside to this class is the fun factor with that wild shape. However, it can also be very powerful with one specific subclass, Circle of the Moon, which grants extra bonuses to wild shape attacks. And with the right combat approach and gear, this class too can even solo honor mode. However, the Druid is a watered down cleric in terms of spell casting. The class wants you to cast spells only to wild shape and forgo spellcasting altogether, so the result here is a weaker spellcaster that's best played in one style, one way, focusing on wild shape. And if you choose this path, use the Tavern Brawler feat and Elixir of Strength to increase your damage dramatically. That will be a big help, however, other classes just perform better overall in combat, spellcasting, and utility, which brings Druid down lower on this list. Next for the C tier, coming in at number 10 will be the Wizard class. With your massive spellbook, though not much else, the Wizard does still rank C tier on this list. And while this might seem low, the Wizard is intelligence-based, which is unique for classes in Baldur's Gate 3, with the main upside of the Wizard being spell diversity, allowing you to learn spells from scrolls with gold, and this gives you a massive spellbook with huge upside if you like that versatility. However, the Sorcerer and Warlock are going to be much better compared to the Wizard's combat power because it's going to fall a little bit behind. Sure, you can cast any spell, well, almost any, but does that actually matter if the Sorcerer can cast 2 fireballs on turn 1 at level 5? Not really. The spell diversity is great and the intelligence and skill checks also are good, but the raw power for this class is going to fade pretty quickly. You can pick a Wizard still if you want the traditional D&D experience, with those intelligence-based checks, but just don't expect it to be the best spellcaster, unfortunately, in Baldur's Gate 3. But that brings us to the B tier for this video, coming in with the Bard here at number 9. The Bard is going to be the ultimate utility class with a lot of flexibility both inside and outside of combat. Since Bard is a charisma character, it's mostly skipped because the Sorcerer, Warlock, and Paladin are objectively more powerful in combat though. Where the Bard really shines is outside of combat, in dialogue, and influencing choices and decisions. So while it's not terrible in combat, they do fall behind many other classes due to the weaker spellbook, slower start, and just not offering anything unique that other classes can't do. So the best way to use Bard then is going to be to multi-class 6 Bard, 4 Rogue, 2 Fighter, in my opinion. Instead of melee weapons or bow, you're going to use dual crossbows. Take the College of Sword Bard subclass here, Rogue and Thief, to gain an extra bonus action. This would give the Bard great utility in combat plus some extra range, the downside being though you just aren't more powerful than the Ranger class. This ranking is mostly based on overall combat performance, keep that in mind. So if your goal in Baldur's Gate 3 is purely dialogue and passing speech checks, yeah, you can move the Bard up higher up on this list, however it just doesn't have much to offer outside of that. Also, coming in the B tier, we have the Monk class. Now, the benefit of the Monk is that it doesn't rely on equipment for damage, bringing it up quite a bit in this tier list. Now, using open-handed attacks, the monk does massive damage in melee range without any fancy weapons or armor. This is going to be super helpful as you can respec a hireling at any time and gain the power of the monk build without having to pick up every single important piece of gear in Act 1 and Act 2. The weakness of the monk is it has fewer spell casting options, relies solely on the open hand, multi-class, bonus action build. Like the fighter, the monk must have higher mobility or their turn is going to be completely wasted, and they can be shut down by spellcasters at range as well. However, the upside here is a super fun and simple build that isn't focused on the best gear combinations possible to actually work. The best build for monk is using 9 levels with the Way of the Open Hand subclass, and then use 3 levels with rogue and thief. This is going to give you an extra bonus action each turn, and the monk still makes use of that with an additional melee attack. Since the monk has built-in extra attack, each unarmed attack is hitting twice with 2 bonus actions per turn, which is great. So while it is a solid build in class overall, there are just better options, especially when you approach endgame. Still in the B tier, next let's talk about the Cleric class. This is going to be B tier on this list primarily due to its powerful support and its emphasis on radiant damage. Most players are familiar with Shadowheart, and having a Cleric early in Baldur's Gate 3 is definitely very helpful because of healing, range, plus guiding bolt damage. However, in later levels, they do start to fade in power as the Paladin and the Sorcerer scale up much higher. Oftentimes you're waiting to heal something rather than just doing damage like the rest of your team with the best setup, of course. So for the Cleric build, you're going to want to pick up Luminous Armor, which debuffs the enemy when hit by radiant damage. You could build a hybrid tank and healer build here using this armor and other pieces, which helps to avoid attacks. However, you will have low mobility and go later in the turn order, and this might create some problems for the Cleric that other classes and subclasses don't necessarily have. Now, the Light and Life Cleric are the 2 best subclasses, and you should pick Light for Radiant Tank and Life for Pure Healer as well. Moving on up to the A tier, let's talk about the Fighter class next. Fighters rank A tier because they don't require you to multi-class to be effective, and it's overall the simplest melee build you can find in Baldur's Gate 3. The fighter gains something unique at level 11, and that's the improved extra attack. Thus, you gain another attack on top of extra attack, meaning 3 attacks per action. And with Action Surge, Haste, and Bloodlust Elixir, you can attack up to 12 times in combat, which is insane. The Great Weapon Master feat also gives you another attack with your bonus action, making you just a powerhouse of smashing through enemies without being overly complex. It's hard to rank the fighter this low, but it does lack diverse spellcasting, has weakness to spells, and also a reliance on gear that just make things a little bit less optimal. The fighter is vulnerable to magic spells that can also drop your weapon, stun you, and outright lock you down with immobilization. And unlike the monk, you must have the best gear set up to be effective. And lastly, the Eldritch Knight subclass is the only real subclass that has spellcasting here. Speaking of Eldritch Knight, this is going to be a great playstyle since Baldur's Gate 3 added Booming Blade in patch 8. You can now use this cantrip in combat to attack and add extra thunder damage per action. This gives you a lot more damage each turn without costing a spell slot. So if you want heavy armor, 2-handed melee weapon, and to focus on high strength, this is going to be the class for you, and it's super simple and effective in Baldur's Gate 3. Coming in next at the A tier is going to be the Warlock class. The Warlock ranks as A tier in this list due to its simple nature, allowing you to be effective as a spellcaster and a melee damage dealer. In patch 8, the developers added the Hexblade subclass to Warlock. This subclass is by far the best level 1 dip possible, giving you a massive boost in overall power. The best part is Sorcerer, Paladin, and any spellcaster can take 1 level only and gain weapon and armor proficiencies, good spells, and cantrips. Now, the Warlock and the Sorcerer play very similar, so you could make the argument that it should be higher on this tier list. The main difference, though, is that Sorcerer has meta magic and the Warlock doesn't. This gives the Sorcerer more control over magic and allows the bonus action to be used to cast a spell. But you could still combine the Hexblade Warlock at level 1 and then multiclass to Sorcerer or Paladin later on, and that combination is used because the Hexblade, again, is so powerful just at level 1. The best build type to use for the Warlock is using the Warlock for 6 levels and then the Paladin for 6. You want Hexblade subclass for the Warlock and Vengeance Paladin. The benefit of this setup and build is you stack just Charisma and it applies to both spellcasting and melee damage with Shadowblade. You won't have the raw magic spellcasting power of the Sorcerer, but it's pretty darn close. Overall, an insane build setup and very powerful. Our last A tier class is going to be the Barbarian. Barbarian comes in number 4 at this list, nearly ranking S tier, mostly because of its survivability, range with throw, plus just the fun factor with the rage mechanic. Now in patch 8, Baldur's Gate 3 released the giant subclass for the Barbarian, making the popular throw build even better. This class and subclass combo is capable of soloing honor mode, surviving heavy melee damage, basically being the Rambo class of Baldur's Gate 3. The major weakness though with the Barbarian is the lack of spellcasting. Even with their subclasses, there isn't a spellcasting option here until the Fighter, which can use the Eldritch Knight subclass. Even then, you won't have any support options, leaving you with a complete melee-focused or range throw build. That really, though, is good enough most times, considering that throw can solo honor mode, though it is very battle-specific. Now, the best build for the Barbarian is going to be Giant due to its doubling of thrown damage. You could equip the Barbarian with Returning Pike early on, then the Tavern Brawler feat at level 4, then use Elixir of Strength to increase your strength to 21 until a long rest, and you essentially have an Act 1 powerhouse that can be used all the way through the campaign. If it weren't for the lack of spellcasting plus lower charisma scores overall, we'd rank the Barbarian higher on this tier list. Coming in next though, we have the S tier, the top 3 classes you'll want to be using in Baldur's Gate 3. Coming in number 3, we have the Ranger class. Definitely top 3 in the game due to its overall range, elemental arrows, and its spell casting ability. Think of the rogue just basically 10 times better, and that's what the Ranger can do. You still gain almost all the utility of the rogue class with lockpicking, trap detection, and pickpocketing, but gain unreal range damage thanks to armor and weapon proficiencies, built-in extra attack, and spell casting. Now, the weakness of the Ranger are the requirements to multi-class, to maintain power increase, arrow dependency, and limited spell casting. You won't be a wizard running around throwing fireballs, but you definitely have enough spells to make a difference when it's needed. You have to focus on getting arrows, like the arrows of many targets, and creature-specific arrows as well, with specific options able to add new effects like AoE, fire damage, and damage to dragons. Basically, once you know the fights, you can spend significant time pre-buffing and solo anything in the game. The best subclass here is going to be Gloomstalker, which gives you all sorts of bonuses to going first and eliminating one or more targets in one turn. You want to multi-class the Ranger with Rogue for Assassin subclass, which helps on turn 1 as well, along with Fighter for Action Surge. What you end up with is a long-range sniper capable of nuking the entire team before any other member of your party even takes a turn. This is why many players use this combo for soloing honor mode runs. The Ranger just works. Now, it's not a charisma-based character, so you might struggle a little bit in dialogue or have to use another character as your main speaker, which is going to influence the game's fun factor for you possibly. But if you're solely focused on combat performance, then Ranger class is definitely one of the best ways to go. Coming in at number 2, we have the Paladin class. Basically the kings of versatility due to Divine Smite, armor and weapon choices, and pure survivability. What's great about the Paladin is you can use it for Divine Smite multi-class, which gives you more burst damage when you use melee attacks, or just play for many if not all 12 levels with the Paladin. The subclass choices are great though, giving you utility in different areas and adding a lot to the story as well. Plus the developers loaded the game with specific weapons and armor choices just for the Paladin class. The Paladin does have downsides though, which lowers it from the best class, mainly mobility, slow to start, and weaker spellbook options. Since the Paladin is a quote hybrid spellcaster, you won't have as many spell slots or higher level spells. So you mainly use your spells for Divine Smite procs, which trigger extra radiant damage. Also, your mobility is pretty bad at the start of the game until you get Misty Step with the Vengeance subclass. You really feel the class is weak up to that point. But the Paladin has everything: big damage, healing, support, survival, and it's just great fun to play. The best combination, of course, for the Paladin is the Oath of Vengeance or Oathbreaker with 4 levels into Fighter for Action Surge, Feat, and subclass champion. Of course, you can even play as the Dark Urge full evil character and get the Deathstalker mantle, allowing you to go invisible after a kill. This combo is going to be harder to pull off if you don't know where the gear is, but if you want to one-shot bosses while you play this game, then this is the best class combination for you. But that brings us to what I think is the strongest class of all in Baldur's Gate 3, which is the Sorcerer, your S-tier meta magic caster. Combined with Shadowblade and Resonance Stone, the Sorcerer is just insane. In previous patches and updates, the Sorcerer was also very strong, but with patch 8, they introduced a new spell called Shadow Blade. This made the Sorcerer not only a powerful spellcaster, but a melee damage dealer as well. Now you can rip off huge melee criticals and still rely on meta magic to cast multiple spells per turn. The upside of the Sorcerer is that meta magic, allowing you to manipulate spells like distance, effect, and even using your bonus action. The class starts fast and doesn't slow down very much at all. It does very well with multi-class combinations like the Warlock, for example. The downside of the class is it can be complex and it doesn't have the wide range of spells like the Wizard, but if you can nuke everything in one turn, then who needs a lot of spells anyway? The best combination here is to play with a melee-focused Shadow Magic Sorcerer and Paladin combination. Using 6 levels of each, the Sorcerer selects the new patch 8 subclass Shadow Magic, and at level 6, swap to Paladin, taking Oath of Vengeance. What this does is it allows you to stack Charisma or Strength for melee damage, and then gain the advantage of melee Divine Smites. You have all the flexibility, armor, and weapon proficiencies, minus heavy, but you won't need that at endgame anyways. So the Sorcerer gives great advantage, even in dialogue, exceptional combat performance overall, and versatility to play at either full range or melee, making it the best class of all in Baldur's Gate 3. But with that said, if you liked the video today, do me a favor and crush that like button. It absolutely helps the channel and lets YouTube know to share this video with others, so much appreciated. You can also click on the link down below for a full written guide of this tier list, plus more builds and more guides for Baldur's Gate 3 over on our website. That's hacktheminotaur.com. And as always, I hope you're doing well, stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.